You've bought into the hype, you bought yourself a Motion Boom, you're enjoying it, you can't believe the value that we're getting from the Soundcore Motion Boom, and you're thinking, I need to up my game a bit more. What am I going to do? You're going to buy a second Motion Boom. It's got to be done, because 2 Motion Booms retailing at the moment around 80 quid, £160. That's the minimum you're going to pay for example, Onyx Studio 7 still retailing 250. Street price Onyx 6 at the moment seems to be around £170. 2 Motion Booms is cheaper than a single Onyx Studio. You deep bass lovers do love your Onyx Studios series. Has been a hell of a series and has been a hell of a ride. How this, other than it's been around all the time, it has evolved many ways, gone back to past iterations, gone back to another, and now Onyx Studio 7, of course, the best of the bunch. Maybe not, because 2021, not only is it not IPX7 rated, it's not IPX rated at all. So don't drop your Onyx Studio 7 into a bath like I did, just to test it. Mine did float, it did soak up a hell of a lot of water, but it did work afterwards, but it might not have done. Now, this video is really about 2 Motion Booms. Is it really everything it promises on paper? I've said it before. What do you expect when you add a second speaker, identical speaker to the first? You're doing 2 things. You're doubling the surface area of the drivers. You're doubling your power. 30 watts on paper now is 60 watts. That should give us 3 decibels a gain. Double the surface area of the drivers, another 3 decibels a gain, potentially 6 decibels a gain. Of course, not all things are equal. They are pairing in Bluetooth. You're going to get possible losses over that format, depending on how well the brand has implemented the actual TWS pairing. And it is TWS pairing. You seem to either get Partycast with Soundcore, or you get TWS. Personally, I prefer TWS because, hey, huge shock to everybody, I don't have 100 speakers. They keep advertising, you can pair up to 100 speakers. Well, if you've got 100 friends and they're all bringing their speakers around, well done to you. I haven't got 100 friends. I've just got 2 friends, 2 speakers do me. TWS, which is stereo, Partycast, which is the, up to 100 or more, I don't know, 1 million, does it really matter? No, but no TWS, no true wireless stereo pairing. So, shall I get another one? Because some brands, I pair them, but I've got to go through the app. JBL, you know who you are. It's a nightmare. Makes stereo pairing unusable now. Since the JBL Charge 3 had an upgrade to Connect Plus, no wireless stereo locking. You can't just set them once and forget them like you used to. I like the way Soundcore are doing things at the moment. You've got a dedicated TWS button. It's not hidden away under the flap, which, by the way, is really hard to open if you don't have a screwdriver. It's right there on top. You got your first, you buy your second. What are you going to do? You're just going to hold the TWS buttons. Of course, you're going to turn them on first, and then hold the button down on both. They will flash white, find each other, and like a miracle, they will sync together. They will go steady white. Your master, the one, only connect with one to your phone. The master will be the left, slave will be to the right, and you're away. Then all you have to do next time is what I'm going to do now, just to show you how well this is implemented, how well it works. I turn on my master, which would be this one, and you hold the button down, and then I'm going to turn on the other one. Boom, 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 boom. Right. Now, that final sound told me they are locked. I know they're locked. Steady white on both TWS buttons. And that was it. This is my master. I know it's my master because the Bluetooth light is blue. The slave doesn't have the Bluetooth light on. I haven't paired it with my phone. No need to do that. And we're away. Now, I know you've got a couple of questions because in the past with the Motion Plus, it was a bit of a nightmare. We set one to, we want to play them both in custom. We set one to custom and the other one was playing like bass up, and then it was bass off, and they went all around the houses till they fix it in firmware. But I have to tell you, good news, I set them both individually to have a custom setting. It was the same setting. However, when I start up, and I check individually left and right channels, they're both playing custom, and it did appear that even if I didn't set custom on the other one, it was picking up the settings from the first. However, just for safety's sake, I have set the same custom settings on both. However, if you set custom on one, and then I go back in the app, it does seem that the second speaker then picks up those settings. That's really good. I will also note that I did test both speakers, and as you would expect, it's a cheap budget speaker, and that's what makes it my pound for pound world champion, because fantastic value. But of course, as you expect, there was a slight difference between how they measured. Bass was slightly better on my newer boom, but it's only fractionally, but it was a definite difference. Probably the most notable thing about the difference was I got a bit more of a peak around 13 kilohertz on my older boom, but on my newer boom, less of a peak at 13, but more of a peak around 10. So a bit of retuning, I don't know. That's setting them both to signature mode. So, all right, yes, come on, get on with it, Al. So what I'm going to do, first test, of course, clue. I'm going to be comparing two of them against the 7 and the 6 of the Onyx. But, however, first, you got your first. You set it playing 73% volume, and then you immediately add in the second. What is the difference? So, no normalizing, so you don't have to make comments about that. No volume adjusting, I'm doing a straight test. The first one I start playing at 73%, then I add in the second. What is the immediate difference? And then I will immediately play them normalized. So I will adjust the volume of the second one. Any slight differences I will normalize, so you hear the actual differences when they are both playing the same volume between a single and a pair.
Everything about it scares me. Can't get these voices out of my head. I've got monsters under my bed. I don't think I'm alright. My friends tell me that I'll be fine, but I can't get these voices out of my head. I've got monsters under my bed. I don't think I'm alright. My friends tell me that I'll be walking up the stairs. This life is really crazy and it sure as hell ain't fair. But then it's okay, I'ma tell them I don't care. I just gotta keep on shuffling, I just gotta be the man. That's really gonna do it, that's really gonna make it. When I feel this gravitation in my body, gonna do it for my people now, yeah, for my nation, for my soul, and for my legacy. Cause I'm on my path and I be coming for my destiny.
So, oh blimey, oh yeah, it's everything we dreamed about. They sync up in stereo lovely. As you saw, stereo pairing is a doddle. You've got to pair them. You do get a lovely soundstage. You do get a lovely simmer to the sound. It's quite exciting. It's nice and airy. It's everything I would have hoped for. And you even get a little bit more even normalizing them and adjusting the volumes. There's a little bit more in the deep bass. Because don't forget, if I'm able, same volume, if I'm playing two, I can play the volumes a little different to get the same volume that I would get out of the first one. And what does that mean? It means I'm obviously on all these speakers, a bit more bass, lower down the volume steps, means you immediately get that benefit of being able to play at a low volume step, more bass there, if indeed that's what you want. But to me, it's win, 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 win. and a win, because there's more bass, it's a lovely sound stage, it's exciting, it's open, there's lots of detail going on. It's way better than having a single motion boom that was already great. So the question is, okay, all right, Al, let's get on with it. Can it now compete with, for me, all the speakers I've had? That was always going to happen at some point. Can it compete with the deep bass king, the Onyx Studio 7? And just to point out some of these differences between the Onyx Studios and the Motion Boom, probably the most noticeable thing, of course, is, I know, yeah, Al, you do portable Bluetooth speakers, but is that really portable, the Onyx Studios? Because they have a teeny weeny little, you need a microscope to see the battery inside this. It's 11 watt hours, or 11 point, basically 12 watt hours, even if you round it up, is nothing. If you play these at maximum volumes, you're doing well to get an hour or just over an hour. Whereas on my Motion Boom, maximum volume, I can get nearly 6 hours. And there's a difference. Is it really portable? Obviously, it eats away at that battery. It's serious, plays down to 30 hertz, serious deep bass on the Onyx Studio series. That alone would have eaten into the battery. But when you've got that teeny weeny, can hardly see it, need a microscope to find it, battery, you're only just portable. But it is portable, you can do it. Bear in mind, with the mains lead plugged in, it is 50 watts, but I'm only going to test it as portable speakers on battery. So you'll see headlines 50 watts only, like JBL with their extremes, only if you plug the mains lead in. But this is 30 watts. 30 watts no matter what you do with it on battery. Any other differences of note? Of course, it's the price. £160 is still cheaper than the street price of the Onyx Studio 6 and appears to be still the proper retail value, $250 if you want to pick up the Onyx Studio 7. There's still old tech in the Onyx Studios. They're still sporting a Bluetooth 4.2. We have got Bluetooth 5 in the Motion Booms. Now, headlines of the Onyx Studio would tell you can't do stereo pairing, but if you Google it, you can stereo pair. Everybody seems to know, even I know now, even though I don't have a pair to try, that you can play these in stereo. If you follow Google the instructions, I believe it was hold the play button there. I haven't got instructions in front of me because I haven't tried it, but you guys know you can play these in stereo. Google it, the instructions. But Harman Kardon are the only people that don't know you can't play their speakers in stereo, but actually, hey, you can. You've only got a USB-C connection on the Motion Boom. But look, the flip side of that means you got USB-C, yeah, but that means we're tied now 5 volts, 2 amps for our charging, whereas tiny battery, we don't really need fast charging, do we? But hey, no USB, it's a barrel charger, but it's 19 volts, 2 amps, that's 38 watts of charging. So tiny battery, you're going to charge it really quick. The Onyx Studio 6 floats, and it floats brilliantly with the drivers up, means you can actually play it in a pool and you leave it there. You can do the same with the Onyx Studio 7, but of course, it's not actually rated IPX7, so you're going to, obviously, if you leave it in too long, it's going to knacker the speaker, but it does float. I did test it, and I got away with it. Just bear in mind, the ports at the back are not covered. I don't know if they simply forgot to put a cover on it, and then we better not give it an IPX rating because we can't get one now. I don't know. Very, very weird. We only had one tweeter. I'm calling it a tweeter. I keep getting comments. You keep calling it a Twitter. It's not a Twitter. It's a tweeter. Playing your high frequency. So we've got one tweeter and a pair of passive radiators and a woofer. But we've got a pair of tweeters. Then we've got pair of passive radiators, but it's in a different orientation. It's firing up, and we've got the woofer on the Onyx Studio 7. So the biggest difference will be a pair of tweeters and one tweeter on the Onyx Studio 7. I said it on the Onyx Studio 6. I've said it before and said it again. You keep saying, that's a handbag. That's not a handbag. That's a man bag. Nobody's going to accuse you of carrying a handbag. And hey ho, even if they did, is it a big deal? I had the Helsinki. That's a proper handbag. Even my mother said to me, you got a handbag. That looks like a handbag. This looks like a man bag. Get on. Let's do the comparison. All right, first of all, I'm going to compare it against the Onyx Studio 6.
Instead of moving on, I'll overthink, then overthink my overthinking. Take a breath, now focus. Don't give up, I'm almost through. You swear it's worth it.
second I lost my direction. Fuck, can I catch a break for a moment? I need just a second. I lost myself. Use a little dreaming just to get by. Use a little something for a good time. Take a look at all the things that you have.
So there's a thing, you add a second speaker, but one thing that is not going to happen is it won't play any deeper than a single speaker. It'll go louder, and the fact that you can go louder, you'll have more bass because simply you're going louder. But however, it won't go deeper. So it's not going to be enough to make up the difference in a deep bass king. It can certainly match and beat for mid bass and upper bass the Onyx Studio 6. But the Onyx Studio 6 has about a 10 hertz advantage in terms of deep bass on the Motion Booms. So it's still king, even when you play them against a pair and you volume match them. It's playing down to about 30 hertz. We're playing down to about 40 hertz. What do I mean by play down to 40 hertz? Well, I mean, before it actually rolls off, you're going to hear it. You get different comments. I know I kind of expect a lot of this to be, because it's obvious to me, and I know it's a lot obvious to most of you who are regulars, but it's not obvious to some people who keep saying, for instance, someone quoted JBL, I think on the flip, they said it says it plays down to 60 hertz. So they couldn't explain, didn't understand why I'm saying you still get some deeper bass than that. 60 hertz is not a cut-off point. 60 hertz is normally, I don't know how they're measuring it because they don't tell us. Industry standard plus or minus 3 decibels. But however they're measuring it, there's a point at which it's below the rest of the frequency response. You're not going to really hear it, or it's considered rolled off, and they're not going to consider that part of the frequency. It's not a hard cut-off if they quote 60 hertz or 40 hertz or whatever. So, for instance, Onyx Studio will say theirs is from 50 hertz. Doesn't mean say it's a cut-off, but where do you actually hear that bass? Well, certainly down to 30 hertz and down to 40 hertz on the Motion Boom. So what about against the Onyx Studio 7? Say for me, I know it's more, you've got 2 tweeters now, so you've got some semblance of stereo, but for me it's still a very, very narrow sound. It's tighter, the vocals are more focused and they're tight. The whole sound overall is tighter than the Onyx Studio 6. So to me this is now a more clinical sounding speaker. This has a much warmer nature, has a little bit more in the deep bass, about a decibel more, you know, when you're approaching that 30 hertz on the Onyx Studio 6, and still a very narrow sound, and that's a thing now. So we got the fantastic stereo separation and how the whole soundstage comes alive. It's really, really nice. Given it's 160 quid. Still can't go quite as deep in the bass as the Onyx Studio 7, but on that particular track, it seemed to have an advantage when it came to upper bass and indeed mid bass. Also, bear in mind, these are all deep bass prominent speakers. So if you know what taste you're looking for, because a lot of you guys I know are upper bass freaks. You love the JBL Extreme 1 and the JBL Extreme 2 because they're upper bass dominant. And here's the thing, what do you actually hear? And in these speakers, the deep bass is louder than the mid and the upper bass, which means you're going to hear it, and they are deep bass prominent. Goes deeper on the Onyx Studio 6, but these three model speakers are all deep bass dominant, and you may not want deep bass dominant. You may want your mid or indeed upper bass, especially if you're playing outdoors. Upper bass is going to kick outside. So if you know you're an upper bass freak, none of these speakers may be what you're looking for. Really want to know now, we've got 2 motion booms. We really don't care what our neighbours say. We're going to play them at full blast. How loud can all these speakers go as portable speakers? And I'm saying that because it will go a bit louder, like the JBL Extreme series, if you plug the mains lead in. But we want to go portable. What do they do on battery?
Can't afford my outfit. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Versace on my wrist, baby, make a wish. You could sell your Rari, but you can't afford my outfit. Versace on my wrist, baby, make a wish. You could sell your Rari, but you can't afford my outfit. Versace on my wrist, baby, make a wish. You could sell your Rari, but you can't afford my outfit. Versace on my wrist, baby, make a wish. You could sell your Rari, but you can't afford my outfit. Pop another bottle of that Hennessy. Out here on the rooftop like a fantasy. Pop another bottle of that Hennessy. Out here on the rooftop like a fantasy. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. With me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me. Everybody on your feet. Pour another shot with me.
By far the loudest is 2 motion booms as a stereo pair. That peak 110 decibels is 7 decibels louder than a single motion boom. And that's big. In overall perceived loudest terms, 4 decibels louder than a single motion boom is a pair of motion booms. It's everything we wanted. Significantly, that loudness does transfer to increased bass, 6 decibels up in upper bass, 4 decibels up in mid bass, and the same again for deep bass. And in even overall bass 30 to 200 Hz, a 6 decibel gain. That's everything we could have hoped for. 4 decibels behind in terms of overall loudness is the Onyx Studio 7. On battery, the Onyx Studio series does not go very loud, but it does retain deep bass. Even at this loudness, minus 34, which is just a decibels behind the Onyx Studio 6, and minus 33 and minus 34 for the 6 and the 7, is still in line with 2 motion booms, and indeed for the Onyx Studio 6, 1 decibel louder. So not going as loud by a long chalk, but holding on to that deep bass gives it a very different sound signature at these volume levels. The 6 is a fraction behind the 7 in terms of overall loudness, but it does have a fraction more in terms of the bass. A decibel up in terms of deep bass, and again, a decibel up in the mid bass. And if we look at the bass, we can see by the time you hit maximum volumes, it's the upper bass and lower mids that dominate the sound of the Motion Booms, both in a single and as a pair. But when it comes to the Onyx Studio 7, they're still deep bass dominant. We've still got the peak. It's the highest peak on the frequency range, and the same for the Onyx Studio 6.
So, oh man, these do go loud. 110 decibels at 1 meter on the actual track that I played is loud. And it's a full 7 decibels louder than a single. So 3 decibels, that's like doubling the power. 7 decibels in peak, not overall, but in actual peak, is loud. 110 decibels. If you're standing right next to it, that's enough for you to... So that just... The point being, not all things equal. Just having a second speaker doesn't mean to say you're going to get the full potential out of it. But you really do when it comes to the Motion Booms. And it sounds great. However, when it comes to maximum volume, you are, well, in custom setting, I will point out, you are getting quite a drop off in the bass. So it's becoming a bit high-pitched dominant, and you may not like that. But you're outdoors, you just want it to go loud, it will go seriously loud. But I have to say, even though they don't go overall actually loud, the Onyx Studios do retain that. It's all about retaining that deep bass. That's how they're tuned. So even at maximum volume, not going loud, but they've got more deep bass than a pair of studios, of Motion Booms. You know, you just got to remember what you're getting. It's not a £500 system. This is £160 for the two. Is it the last word in hi-fi? No, of course not. Is it the last word in value? Well, it probably is at this point, because not only does one sound great, not only does it really go deep for its price and its size. I know you don't like the handle, but forget the handle. You get a pair of them, and you've got everything. You can play it, one at low volume or 2 of them at seriously party level volumes, nice and separated. You get a wide sound stage. It comes together exactly how I would want it. Or you could pay £250 for the Onyx Studio 7 with a very narrow sound, but you will get some, you know, some serious deep bass, but you get a little bit extra deep bass from the Onyx Studio 6. So, but very deep bass prominent, over the top boosted. So again, you may not like that, but if you're a bass freak, if it's about the bass, you know, you do get the deep bass with a teeny battery. So it's never, it's never going to be a win-win-win. There's always some trade-off with these speakers, you know, especially portable Bluetooth speakers. But there's less trade-offs with the Motion Boom. And the fact that you can actually double them and properly double the enjoyment out of them, I think that's great. And it works, they sync, you turn them on next time. It's problem-free. Great value. You wanted to know, as I did, what happens when you add the second Motion Boom. The great things happen, absolutely. Just bear in mind, as I said, custom settings at maximum volumes, big drop-off in the deeper bass. But if you go switch back to default, you'll get a bit more bass, just the way the EQ works with the Soundcore app. Of course, there's no app at all to change the EQ on the Onyx Studio series. So that's my Motion Boom pairing. I don't know if you want to hear them against anything else, but it's going to pretty much knock anything out. Even a single one was already beaten the Extreme 3. It's just it can't really match the upper bass, if that's what you want to say, the Extreme 1. But probably unbeatable for value, isn't it? Hope you got something out of this video as usual. Thank you for watching.